Greetings people, welcome to another Foosh video review. This time we're going to be taking a look at Hasbro's Transformers Generations Cliffjumper and Suppressor 2-pack. Now for the most part these Legends class 2-packs have been an unexpected treat. Once they hit their stride, that is, it got off to kind of a rocky start, but then once Swerve and Cosmos and Tailgate started hitting, the line really picked up some steam. So now we have Cliffjumper, who was actually one of the original Transformers from the original 1984 line. And seeing these cards on the pegs is always kind of a treat because the artwork is always so good. And I swear Cliffjumper has never looked better than he does right here on the card. Unfortunately, the figure that we get doesn't quite live up to the promise of the artwork on the card. So why don't you sit tight while we get Cliffjumper opened and we'll see what this figure has to offer us. Thanks for tuning in. And here is Cliffjumper loose out of the package. The first thing you'll notice, of course, is that once again, poor Cliffjumper has been relegated to being little more than a straight up Bumblebee repaint. So here he is, side by side with the previously released Bumblebee, and all we're seeing really is a red Bumblebee. There is no new mold, there's no new head, as many of the repaints in this line have been benefiting from at least a new head, like the Gears and Swerve situation. But here, we're not even getting that. It's just a straight up repaint. I guess the horns being painted silver is enough of an indicator that, you know, this is Cliffjumper and not just a red Bumblebee. But, you know, Cliffjumper is an interesting enough and cool enough character in and of himself that I'd love to see unique molds released once again. I mean, even the original G1 Cliffjumper wasn't just a repaint of Bumblebee. I mean, he was a heavy retool. I mean, his vehicle mold and robot mode looked substantially different from Bumblebee. Their transformation was identical, but that was basically it. But here, once again, we're just getting a red Bumblebee. And we can do a close-up on his face a little bit, I guess. But if you have Bumblebee, you know exactly what you're getting. You're getting Bumblebee once again, only 100% more red. Now, here's the older Classics Cliffjumper, the Deluxe Class Cliffjumper, that was also just a straight-up Bumblebee repaint. But this guy benefited from a little bit of third-party intervention, and we got a new head for him. And I've got to apologize, this figure is a little bit dusty. I don't pick him up and play with him all that often. I just have him posed on my shelf. So he's collected a little bit of dust. But that's okay. He's Cliffjumper. He's a rough-and-tumble kind of guy. He can handle the grime. So, I mean, this figure benefited immensely from the new head and the new weapons. So, I don't know if such a thing is possible with this guy, or if the expense to create a new head or anything would even be worth it, and I'm not even sure it's possible, since he's so small. I have a feeling this is basically, for the Legends class Cliffjumper, this is it. This is all we're going to get. Now, his accessories aren't identical to what came with Bumblebee. He actually comes with a blaster. Let me see if I can get this in his hand here. The pegs are a little bit tight. And the gun is actually the exact same gun that came with the Legends class Optimus Prime. Same exact gun. And that's because Cliffjumper's accessories, or rather his accessory and his little partner, the thing that justifies this being called a 2-pack, is also just a repaint of what came with Optimus Prime. So Suppressor here is a repaint of Roller, who came with Prime. Is just yellow. Just a yellow Roller, which is kind of neat. And of course the transformation is exactly the same. He basically, you just stand him up. And there is Suppressor in all his suppressing glory. And I guess we can stand up Roller too. I mean, they're not all that different looking in robot mode, quote unquote mode. Suppressor and Roller, it's really just the heads and a different shade of gray is used. Let's see if I can get a close up here. They're very small. They're about maybe an inch in size, maybe a little more than an inch. So they don't offer a lot here. So calling this a 2-pack is kind of a stretch. I mean, it's just he's a glorified accessory, is what Suppressor is. But according to the card back, he may be a Decepticon spy. And Cliffjumper was a notorious Decepticon, or a notorious spy hunter for the Autobots in the old G1 cartoon. He was the one who was always on Mirage's case because he was positive Mirage was a Decepticon spy who had infiltrated the Autobot ranks. So that's actually his description on the back of the card. So that's kind of a neat throwback to the original G1 cartoon. And I know a lot of people place the G1 cartoon above all in terms of importance when it comes to Transformers fiction. Now, it's just disappointing that the Cliffjumper that we got doesn't live up to the artwork on the card, because that just looks awesome. And what we're getting here is just a red Bumblebee. So that's kind of a bummer. But, I mean, it's not a bad mold, and it's a good figure. Like, I like it, and I'm willing to accept it as a Cliffjumper. But, again, a new mold for Cliffjumper would have been awesome, because I really like Cliffjumper as a character. And here's a pretty good example of a dedicated mold for Cliffjumper. This was the zombie Cliffjumper from the Transformers Prime line. That came out a year ago, 2 years ago now? I'm losing track. But this is just an awesome figure, and it's one of the few Transformer Prime figures I still keep on display in my shelf. This is when he came back from the dead, and he was basically a zombie Cliffjumper. But that's the kind of attention I think Cliffjumper always deserves. I've always been a fan of the character. So I'm always just kind of disappointed when all we get is, you know, quote-unquote, just a repaint. And let's see. This guy here can be transformed into a blaster somehow. I'm kind of forgetting how to do this. I know it's fairly simple in execution. Let me see if I can. I'm doing this purely from memory here, and I'm actually afraid I'm going to break it. So, oh, there we go. There we go. That wasn't too bad. And that can be placed in Cliffjumper's hand. So Cliffjumper can be like double duty firepower with this massive cannon and the smaller blaster. Unfortunately, the blaster, suppressor in gun mode, is quite heavy, so I'm not sure he can even support the... No, it looks like he can't support the weight. So, I mean, it was a good thought, Hasbro, but it's not quite going to work out. So let's get him back in one of his more recognizable molds. He just kind of folds over like that. And there he is back in his alt mode. So let's get Cliffjumper in his alt mode here. I'm just going to adjust the camera here to make sure I'm not doing that thing I do where I transform him out of frame, because that is annoying for everybody. So to transform him, we take his feet, we fold him down, and then we peg them together, and that forms the front end of the car. And then basically his whole front end just kind of folds down like this. His arms, the hands fold in, and then the front wheels fold down. And that gives us the whole kind of side panel of the vehicle. And then we just got to fit the pieces all together. There's some pegs here that peg in, and it never happens easily. Nothing is ever easy here. I can just get the darn pegs in where they're supposed to go, and they just don't freaking want to go. Ah, it's so annoying. Like, I just transformed him, like, just as a practice run through before the video, and everything went perfectly smoothly. Now that I've got him on camera, nothing wants to work, because that is the way of the universe, folks. There we go. There we go. See, all I had to do was whine, and everything worked out. So, transforming Suppressor, some of his yellow paint flaked off. Ugh, that's kind of an issue. So there's Cliffjumper's alt mode. It's a little red Sportster, not a Porsche like the original G1. Now it's kind of cool here. We've got some purple details, and that, I guess, and people are saying that it's a reference or an homage to the Transformers Prime Cliffjumper, because this Cliffjumper does have some purple detailing on him. His windows are purple. He's got like some kind of... it's been a while since I've seen Prime, but he was infected with something that made him glow purple in parts. So somehow, some way, the purple on this guy is a reference to the Transformers Prime Cliffjumper. But there he is in his alt mode, his glorious little speedster alt mode. Wheels are just simple little clip-ons. We flip them over, we can see, Cliffjumper smiling at us. Well, Cliffjumper doesn't ever smile, but, well, I guess he does sometimes. He's not a curmudgeon. But he is one of the resident Autobot, kind of tough guys, full of bravado. So that's the alt mode. Now to get him back in his bot mode, we gotta, let me adjust the camera once again. You gotta free the arms up, and that then frees up his legs. Then we fold this whole contraption down and around. It's a pretty intuitive transformation. It all happens pretty quickly and easily. It almost feels like it's doing a lot of it on its own. And then we just fold these panels over, and that reveals his hands. And there we have Cliffjumper. Not Red Bumblebee, Cliffjumper, in his bot mode once again. Now, something I think is kind of cool about mine, and this is kind of cool in a totally not cool way, he's got a little bit of silver paint splotch here, kind of like by his head. And on the carded artwork, it shows like a good deal of weathering on Cliffjumper. You see there's silver scrapes all over him. So I know this was a mistake, but I'm just going to go with it and call it weathering. He's a war-torn Autobot warrior who's been through a few scraps, and he's come out on the end smiling. Come out on the other end smiling, as it were. So that's Cliffjumper. That's Legends Cliffjumper. Nothing you probably weren't expecting. Everything you probably were expecting. So, I mean, he's an okay figure. The mold is a good mold to begin with, so that helps. So if you think he's worth the $10 that he costs at retail, by all means, go pick him up. I'd recommend him just because I'm a fan of the mold. I like Bumblebee, and I like Cliffjumper too. I wish there was more here that was new and unique, but it is what it is. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out here on the Fwoosh. Leave a comment below if you feel so inclined. Check us out on our message boards, and we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.